Hey everyone, excited for episode number 7 of our real estate roundtable. I'm here with Carl and Fabio, and today we're going to talk about three topics. One, we're going to talk about property auctions. Lately, we've been seeing a lot more property auctions coming up, and so we want to cover what that entails and kind of our thoughts on it. It's I don't know, some people love it, some people hate it. So the next thing we're going to talk about is pricing your home to sell. There's three different pricing strategies you can use, and we want to talk about the pros and cons of each, and our strategy on what we think works best. And we might have a difference of opinions on this between the three of us. And then the last one we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the market in general. So how's San Diego's market doing? And then we'll do a quick overview of downtown specifically as well. So first off, we'll start with the first topic, auctions. Fabio wanted to talk about this because we actually have had a couple auctions come up in downtown San Diego, and I've seen some scattered throughout San Diego County as well. And they're unique. These are non-distressed property sales. They're non-distressed property auctions. They're huge in Australia and New Zealand, apparently, and companies are trying to bring them here to Southern California. So what that looks like basically is they list the property at a really low amount. They disclose that it's an auction. They have a deadline to basically register for the auction. And then, if you register, you're able to bid on the property and, potentially get the property for the price that you want. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on them? I know we all discussed it a little bit.
I'm not a fan at all, which is why I kind of want to talk to you guys about it and see what your thoughts on it were. I'm not a fan. Most people that I talk to are not fans of. Actually, most people that I talk to don't even want to touch them. So I'm just even curious to see like why people do it and how much success are really happening with them.
Yeah. But do you think it's something that like maybe we're just not used to, so that's why no one wants to touch it? Or do you think it's just, I mean, obviously it's not how things are done in the United States for the most
Right.
part.
Yeah.
People a lot of times correlate auctions with short sales and foreclosures that we've seen in the past. So the whole auction platform is something that's different. We looked at the numbers. There's only been 122 sales in the last 2 years by the auction through the auction platform on the MLS, and there's been what did I say, 68,000 sales in San Diego County.
Yeah.
So it represents a very, very small percentage, but it seems like we're seeing it a little bit more often now. I don't know, Carl. What are your thoughts?
I mean, maybe it makes sense for distressed properties that need a lot of work as far as like a fixer upper or something. But I mean, a normal sale, I wouldn't do it that way. I think I don't know. I mean, maybe those sellers are being unrealistic on price too, and
Yeah,
that's why they have to auction. I'm not quite sure.
I
yeah. I
just think
mean, oh, go ahead.
I just think that right now, where our market's at right now, I don't think it works, to be honest. Because even for distressed properties, I mean, you put something below market value that's actually willing to sell at that price, you're gonna get multiple offers. You're gonna get multiple cash offers from investors or people that are looking for something that they can buy and fix up themselves. Um, and even then, let's say that it's not a fixer upper. It's a normal, even if it needs a little bit of work, and they go through the traditional method of selling and they put it at market value or below market value. At certain price points in San Diego, we're still seeing multiple offers. So I just don't think it's the right market or the right time for that type of sale process, in my
I
opinion.
agree. I mean, especially when you have programs like Compass Concierge, where we will get your property ready with, our own out-of-pocket expenses. For example, we'll stage your property, paint it, do minor work up to $25,000, and you just have to pay dollar for dollar when you close escrow, and you just invested in your own property with someone else's money. And I think that the auction platform is for people who either need to sell because their back is up against a wall, which is even if it's not a distress sale where there's a short sale or foreclosure looming. I think that I don't know. A lot of times when I see them, it's people who are on the market that failed to sell the first time around, and now they're trying this auction platform. And typically it has to do with either not the right exposure or the wrong price. I mean, one of these, I was looking at some of these properties. I'm going to share my screen really quick just so you can get an idea. So there's 122 sales, like we mentioned, in the last 2 years. But I know one of these properties specifically, they listed for I want to say 1.7 or 1.8 originally, and then decided to do an auction. They listed at 1.25, ended up selling for 1.5 million, which might sound good. I mean, they sold $250,000 over list price, right? But they paid 1.65 for it less than 2 years before. So I think it was a year prior, they paid 1.65. So they took $150,000 less, by auctioning it. And then on top of that, there's 122 sales. The whole idea is to get a bidding war and go over list price. But you can see right here, the average sales price, the average list price is $1,039,000. The average sales price is $1,031,000, meaning that it's not even 100% of list of sales price. Now, some of these you could see they did go over, and it's going to be really hard to see in this video, but this property is listed at $1,003,000. It sold for $1,550,000. While it's going over the bid price, the starting bid price, it doesn't mean that it's getting the market value. So on top of that, 122 were successful, but this is the list of properties that were expired or canceled or withdrawn. And you're looking at 110 total. So only a little over 50% were successful in selling. I just think overall
we're successful in selling, but less than 1% of sellers opted to go the auction route. Which
but a 50% success rate, it's not very good.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's not good
Would you
at all.
hire an agent that said that they are only 50% successful? Probably not.
Yeah, it just seems like a huge risk.
Yeah, granted, like if you're in the ultra luxury market, the sales rate to failure rate is pretty low. A lot of times, properties don't sell in the ultra luxury or luxury markets, but to have a 50% success rate on the auctions, I don't. Obviously, I'm just pulling those numbers from the MLS, so they might be a little inaccurate, but at the same time, that's the best information that we have access to, and I think that it just numbers tell a story. So that being said, I will go into the next topic, which is pricing your home competitively, and I think this has a lot to do with avoiding the auction route and actually like taking your best at bat the first time around and actually trying to sell correctly the first time. So there's 3 different pricing strategies. Fabio, I'm going to have you take over on that.
Yeah. So, when you and I were talking about like, why do people do auction? And everybody has different opinions and different ways of doing things. And that's actually the conversation that we have when we meet with potential sellers is, how much do you think your house is worth? How much would you like to get out of it? And most times sellers think their house is the best house on the neighborhood, right? They think that there's just the best layout, the best upgrades, the best everything. And they usually want to price it at the most they possibly can, but that doesn't work all the time, right? So there's 3 things that we propose. Number 1 is you can price it above market and try to, pinpoint the unique things that set your property aside from everybody else's and look for that one buyer that wants to buy that particular house in that neighborhood. The second one is you can look at the activity around the area, see what has sold, and price it accordingly to what the market dictates. And the third option, which honestly happens to be my favorite way of approaching it, especially in today's market, is you look at the activity, look what sold, and then you price your home a little bit below the most recent sale in order to create more attention, get more people out to physically look at the property, and then create a bidding war again, it's not an auction, it's a traditional sale, but by you getting more people there and interested in your property, you get more offers that at that point start competing against each other. And what I've seen by doing that is once you get multiple people into the house, they're not just looking at pictures and reading information. They physically go into the house. They can picture themselves in it. They can picture their furniture. They can picture their kids playing in the backyard, and it creates a different sense of emotion that they would never get by just looking online. So that's why I prefer that method, because from my experience, it's created a lot more demand, which has helped drive up price most of the times.
Carl, I'm interested to hear your thought process on this, because you work in a neighborhood that sells very quickly. Carl does a lot in Claremont, and in Claremont there's like no homes for sale, and so whenever you list something, it flies off the shelf. Carl, what are your thoughts on it?
I think listing their traditional way is the way to go, and doing it at I don't know. It's tough. So I think that they should almost list a little bit below the market value and try and get that demand for it. I mean, we've had proof of success in that community doing it that way in the past. I mean, if you look at the one on Marlista, what do we sell that one for? $40,000. Yeah, 40,000 more than we ever thought, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, that's my thought on it.
So I'm going to disagree with you guys both of you guys. I take the route that I think it's always best to price right in line with where the comps are. Especially if it's a hot neighborhood, you price it right in line with the comps. Chances are you're going to get multiple offers. You really want to set expectations, and then get as many people in as possible, and drive up the price with multiple offers. So not trying to reach for a high price, but starting at market value and then letting people get emotionally attached to the property and then driving it up from there. I think that depending on the market, there's different strategies as well, especially if homes aren't selling as fast. And like I work a lot downtown, and the luxury market downtown is not flying off the shelf. Chances are the price is negotiable. So most of the time I figure out where the seller ultimately wants to be, see if that's in line with comps, and then we'll price at or above that price a little bit, knowing that we're going to need some room to negotiate. Now, I'm not talking like $100,000 over the last comp. I'm talking maybe $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 over the last comp, knowing that we're going to have to negotiate down because things are not flying off the shelf in downtown luxury real estate. But it just depends on each market. And like in both Carl and Fabio work in areas that are super hot and they sell really fast. So pricing right at market value, or potentially a little under. When we say a little under market value, we're not talking $30,000. We're talking
right
$5,000-$10,000 under market.
That's the sweet spot.
Yeah. So I think go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, to kind of, it's the first time that I hear you actually like flat out say that that's your strategic method of pricing. I would argue, not argue, but I guess my question to you would be, especially in your market in downtown, where in a building, let's say we have two similar floor plans. What are you gonna do to set that? Let's say you and I we have the same floor plan in the same building for sale, right? And not that much difference in level. And you price it according to comps because you're giving yourself that room to negotiate or a little bit above comps. And then I come in and list that property, $5,000 to $10,000 below comps because I want the attention. I want people to go to my listing instead of yours. How do you combat that?
Well, so obviously we're gonna look at anything we're competing with, and we're gonna price according to that as well. So if there's another model match that's priced lower, we have to look at the condition of the property. We have to look at the views. We have to look at the height, all that stuff. If you're saying views and height are similar, we're going to go to condition. And if the condition's similar, then yeah, I'm going to have that conversation with the seller, and we're going to talk about motivation. Do you want their property to sell first, or do you want to sell first? How motivated are you to get out of this property? if someone's highly motivated and they're trying to sell in an area that's not moving very quickly, they're typically going to have to give up on price. And that not only do they give up on price, like they do need the right marketing and everything, but you have to make it enticing in a market that doesn't move very quickly. And the most effective way to make it enticing is price. And I've seen this before where I've been stubborn with pricing because fair market, market value is higher than what it might actually sell for in that given time because they need to sell out of needing to move quickly. And so there, sometimes you have to take a loss on that. But at the same time, if I'm looking at the comps and I say like, hey, fair market value is 1.3, but if you really want to sell quickly, you're going to have to go down to 1.25. It's going to depend on the seller. Is that $50,000 difference? Is it worth a quick move, or are you willing to wait 6 months, 8 months?
Right.
It's all about having that conversation, coming up with a plan together. Because pricing in a luxury market or in a slow moving market is very difficult because you don't want to sell yourself short, but you also want to manage the timeline. So that's probably one of the most difficult things about selling in a slower market.
Right. Especially if when you go to market, there's no competition, and then all of a sudden comes the other seller, and like, oh, well, I know that one's for sale. I'm gonna come in and undercut them, and at that point, the sellers are against each other, right? So it benefits the buyers because there's some leverage. So I was just curious to how you would kind of work against something like that, but it makes sense what you said.
Yeah, one of our sales managers, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Steve Salinas in North County, was saying, and it's kind of an odd statement when he first said this, but no one is motivated in a transaction other than the seller. And what he was talking about is the seller is trying to liquidate their asset. Well, whether they're moving or whatever reason, the seller is trying to get rid of an asset and they want to get the most money possible. They might be comfortable. They might not need to sell, but they want to. They're motivated enough to sell, to put their home on the market and have people going through it.
Yeah.
A buyer might be motivated to buy, but that's not the only property available. So that's what he meant by that. Like the only person in the transaction that's motivated is the seller. And it does have some truth. So, in the end of the day, whenever we're pricing property, we try to figure out their motivation and their desired time frame. Carl and I just went on a presentation, and unfortunately, we disagreed on price, and we were quite a bit off from market value was saying one thing, but what their expectations were another, and that's a tough situation because. Yeah, we could agree to take it at that price, but it might sit on the market for 6 months. Now, what did that 6 months cost? So, and then ultimately what ends up happening is they start reducing their price and reducing, and then they end up lower than where they would have been initially had it been a fresh new listing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts on price. I don't always go the undercut route. In hot markets, it definitely works. I mean, market value is what a buyer's willing to pay for it. So if you get as many buyers as possible through the door and get them emotionally attached, that's how you get the most money for a property. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Marlies is a really good example of that. The home that Carl sold. So.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about very minimal difference, right? Like $5,000 to $10,000, like nothing excessive.
I felt like that property we priced right in line with the comps, and we got 8 offers and got $40,000 over. So the seller was hoping for $700,000. I didn't think that we can get above $680. But again, buyers set the price. So once they start competing, we got the price up to $720. So
yeah.
Cool.
Last thing we're going to talk about, market in general. So San Diego County, the market's been pretty active. The numbers as far as sales aren't great. The charts will reflect, not great sales as far as number of sales. It's down 45% compared to last year. which is obviously a huge decrease. There were 1,879 sales last month. And in May of 2019, it was the year high at 3,450 sales. So you might be saying, those numbers are terrible. What do you mean it's speeding up? If you look at pendings, there 3,087 homes went pending last month, which kind of hints towards a strong June. So we should see a large number of sales this month in June. If you compare that to April, only 1,895 homes went into escrow. So 1,895 went into escrow in April, 1,879 sold in May. So see how they're semi-correlated.
Right.
We've seen a lot of activity though.
Yeah.
You know, the team, I think we put 4 into escrow this month, and 3 of them were higher price points, over $1 million. So definitely seeing more activity in the luxury market. Although it's still slow, it's nice to see a little bit of a spike in the numbers.
Yeah.
Inventory in San Diego County is the bottom line. So the orange is downtown, the blue is San Diego County. San Diego County is at 1.9 months supply, which is extremely low. It suggests that it's still a seller's market. And the thing about it right now is that less people are listing. So not many people are listing because they don't want people in their home. A lot of the homes that are coming on are vacant. Not as many owner-occupied places or tenant-occupied places. So it's limiting the amount of new listings. So we're down to 1.9 months of supply of inventory, which is really low. That's down 29% from last year. Downtown San Diego, we've seen a bit of an increase. It's a little bit of a different market if you know, rather than looking at the county as a whole. And then market times stay pretty steady. So homes are selling in about a month in San Diego County. In downtown, it's about a month and a half. So on average. Do you guys want to add anything to the market or what you guys are seeing?
No, I mean, well, I guess the only thing I could add is just from conversation with different people is they're definitely paying more attention to where they live than they did before.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
they're being, they're what they're looking for is a lot more defined than before. You know, they definitely know what they want and what they don't want, and they know that from the start. Whereas before they're like, well, let's try this and see how it looks once we go out. You know, like now they're like, hey, we need this, we need a yard, we need a pool, we need that 3rd bedroom for an office. So those things are becoming more important for sure.
Wait, so you mean sitting in your house for 3 months gives you clarity on what you need in your house?
100%.
Yeah.
And another thing that's come along that I actually enjoy as a realtor is the process has become a lot more streamlined, right? There's less people that are just reaching out to be like what we call looky-loos. They're not just searching just to search. Like most people, given that we have to go through certain steps before we can even go out to the property, they're a lot more dedicated, and it helps.
I definitely agree with that. On the listing side, I've had a lot less showings, but the people that are looking are actually serious. Like they're looking to buy something. They're not just looking because they have an open weekend or something.
Right.
So I can agree with that people that are looking right now are actually a lot more serious than any time before, basically. I mean, usually there's a percentage of people that won't buy something even after looking at a bunch of homes. I think that percentage is a lot lower right now.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Cool.
Well, we will be doing a video next week, and we're going to try something different. Instead of our favorite picks, where we pick a property that we like, we are going to do that still, but we're going to do it in person. So we're actually going to walk the property show you the property in person with you know, a video, and just walk through, show you the features that we like, and tell you why we like it. So that was Fabio's idea. We'll see if it was a good one on next week's episode.
You guys have to definitely give your input when we're out there, though. I think that's what makes it interesting. You know, people want to see different opinions, because you guys like different things than I do. So it'll be interesting to see when I pick a house what you guys think of it, and when you pick a house what I think of it. So I think that's gonna be the most interesting part.
I think I used to be solely downtown. Like, I used to only care about looking at views and downtown and different buildings. And I think I'm going to join Carl in the burbs.
Yeah.
You know, with the baby on the way and everything. I need more space.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. We will see you guys next week.
All right.